The only thing as beautiful as that is this creep that is just, let me tell you, Swiffer Mop is not going to cut it. In the top right, we have the red Zerg player. He is HateMe.
Boo.
He did ask for it.
He did ask for it. And in the bottom left-hand side, it is YoungYakov. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's like
right.
Those names are always it's always tough when someone puts like Young in their name, right? We had like the 3-hour conversation yesterday about Petite Drogo still being petite. I don't know. I feel like what could change it? Does he go to the gym and become Game of Thrones mountain style? Like start taking like the protein supplements? Like is that enough? I don't know.
He has certainly gotten bigger over the years, I would say, right? Like physique wise. So yeah,
he far more closely resembles the Giga Chad meme than he previously did. So I gotta at least give him
for sure. No doubt about that. And this is I think second shortest rush distance in the map pool, and very, very short map, very small map, perhaps the smallest in the map pool. And both players are choosing to open with a hatch first regardless. So you like to see that. YoungYakov patrolling his overlord outside of his home base, just in case there is any sort of early pull shenanigans, and to gather information on banelings or on any sneakiness, right, around the map that HateMe might have gone for. So HateMe kind of taking a similar approach in that he sends his overlord on a path where it would spot sneaky links. So both players kind of accounting for the early pulls in a way, but both players also going for the macro style. And very early Evo chamber from YoungYakov here, Nate.
All right. Well, we know that this can be a couple of different things. I don't melee. +1 melee. I know that that's the one we've been talking about being popped a lot more on the top level recently. Back in the day, you'd be like, sometimes you get the Carapace opening, or if you're doing like a weird roach rush, you'd go for early range. But a lot of people do like that melee.
Oh, what?
It's gonna be range.
This is crazy. It's range for the roaches. There's not even a roach warren yet, so this is going to be extremely fast +1 roaches. I have never seen this. The reason I thought it was +1 melee was because I thought it's either melee or Carapace for the links, and melee makes more sense because he dropped it when he had 30 gas, which is perfect to get 100 gas off of 1 gas by the time it finishes, and secondly because you invest 50 less gas, so you can actually get your speed kind of in time where it's not too deterring, right? Whereas if you wait the extra 50 gas, it's a lot longer in that early game for your speed to kick in. But this I have never seen. So, it's going to be a few roaches with +1. I don't know how many he's going to be able to afford. Hopefully like 7 or something to justify the upgrade. And of course, this upgrade will allow him to 2-shot Zerglings. So it's rather interesting, but I would say pretty all in.
Yeah, right. It plays very weirdly to the strategy that HateMe's doing, because obviously YoungYakov, he has this Evo chamber very fast, but HateMe is going into roaches with a very quick lair. So the trade-off becomes, well, that +1 range early is really nice, but he's not going to have it for too much longer than HateMe if he doesn't like push it and immediately attack right as it's finishing. Like the timing of the attack needs to be perfect for that to really matter. And I think that on the other side, it gets a little bit scary because having roach speed this early, especially if there's not creep in play, you don't have that ability to retreat or pull back. So if he moves out across the map,
roaches.
That's what I'm saying.
He's just getting a 2-1 timing extremely quickly. I have never seen anything like this. This is very interesting.
So the focal point of this build was to just get to +2 then for YoungYakov. Well, then maybe it evens out on both sides. I always get nervous.
Started the next one, right?
When you move out and your opponent has roach speed and you don't have the option to retreat if he has more than you.
No, absolutely. That's the point that I was going to make as well. Like, I was going to echo your sentiments, because if the attack fails, then you're just dead to the counter attack and you can't really retreat. You're just going to bleed out as you retreat. But yeah, it is an extremely fast +2. But this it doesn't feel like it is very, very economical or anything like that. Right now, HateMe is going to have the option to poke out with his roaches, and he should take that option, just given the fact that he has an early roach speed, right? There's no threat on the map to getting caught or anything like that. So I would love for him to start moving out with these roaches. And YoungYakov is going to hit that 2-1 timing that we were talking about, he's going to hit it really nicely. The +2 range is going to take a little bit longer than the Carapace, so starting the Carapace a little bit after is going to be no issue for him on that regard. And yeah, I mean, the strange thing is HateMe hasn't really done anything with his roach speed, hasn't really applied any pressure, and that's allowed YoungYakov to keep up and even surpass HateMe in terms of workers, which is absolutely crazy. This is such a passive early game for how crazy the opening has been.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest takeaway. We completely skipped the whole Zergling phase. It didn't happen. No Lings, no Banelings. But even though he went for the Evo chamber before his third base, we won't see him actually make use of it until he has his +2 attack and his +1 Carapace from a second Evo done. So it's like, I am just going to 100% try to be, in a weird way, greedy. It turns into a greedy build that is centered around just this colossal timing, which again, because HateMe rather went for that early layer, maybe he doesn't have the double Evo, maybe he didn't have the +1 as early, but the time between their +2 research is about 50 seconds. So it'll be less than a minute window where he has that +2 advantage, but that Carapace, I think, maybe adds up a little bit more, as he'll have about 90 seconds where that one is not done. So he'll have a very, very small window with a 2 upgrade lead. And if he doesn't attack then it almost, I don't know.
This is an anti-timing for HateMe, right? He's going to attack into the +2. So YoungYakov, I mean, I'm completely with you. I think he should be looking to exploit his upgrades coming up right now. And now he's going to move out. Did he cancel Carapace?
It got contaminated.
Oh, okay.
It's at 80. It's at like 85%.
Okay, cool. Well, regardless, he's going to make use of the +2 attack, but not all of his roaches are here, and that means a good engagement for HateMe on this left-hand side. On the other side, the economy is going to be threatened by the roach run-by. So, yeah, good pull-up or good pull-off, I guess, from HateMe there as his queen and his roaches are trying to hold. On this flank, the roaches of HateMe are doing okay, but when reinforcements from YoungYakov arrive, he's gonna have to forfeit that position. Now YoungYakov has control of this like middle ground where he can engage either one of the armies with his full army at once. So now he joins his army, but there's there's only one roach left there, and this is still a very, very close affair there, Nate.
So this is that window we were discussing. +2 attack is just finished for HateMe, which helps. But even though we talk about the Carapace not being as big as the attack in ZVZ, he still has that small window where the Carapace is done. So a little bit more durable. I think the only interesting thing that went down, as you were pointing out, he didn't send all of his roaches to the big fight because he tried to split them off into that third. And a lot of the drones did immediately pull away. So it feels like YoungYakov was trying to split his attention early and could not really do that in the way that he wanted. And so HateMe, I feel like there was an opportunity. If he had all of his roaches right on top of that army that we saw HateMe have outside his natural, maybe he could have just killed him there. But I think the only way he could have won that fight was with the numbers being a little bit lopsided, even though he didn't have the upgrades. And a Nidus network.
Oh, nasty. Yeah, I mean, that is interesting. YoungYakov still has an edge, but I am very much with you. I think he could have closed out the game because especially controlling the area where HateMe's army now sits, right? That area would have to be forfeit. If your opponent just has more units than you have to back into your main probably to wait for reinforcements or into your third, and then your main or your third are open. And as you try to join your army together, your opponent can just go with the full brunt of his army and engage half of your army. So I think that's what I would have rather YoungYakov do with such a strong timing based on the army. But here comes the big fight. HateMe does have the better concave here, but he's actually just seems like holding here, right? So upgrades have evened out. So all of that very cool happenings in the early game really amounted to not too much for YoungYakov, and the game will actually stabilize and in favor of HateMe, dare I say, given that he now has a fourth base.
Yeah, he doesn't have the upgrade advantage at all, so you're on the defending side of this for HateMe. Your units are just coming out and getting there faster. The defender's advantage is big, and the only thing I don't like about the way that he's using this Nidus, the Overseer, I thought was going to try and start the worm inside the main during this, but he's kind of gone back and forth. There it finally starts, but it's at a time where HateMe isn't distracted anymore. He's scouting into the main base. Wow. I think he actually went over the network. He saw it, so he is going to come find this worm as it pops, and YoungYakov loses the element of surprise with that. So bit of a sloppy game, but we're seeing that those fights start to pick up a little bit more as it's moved forward. Just kind of interesting how they're both like gentleman's handshake. We're just gonna go for +2 roaches this game. That's where we both want to end up and just slam them into each other. And well, the Roach Wars, you know, once upon a time, that's all ZVZ was, and it's a little time capsule game we get to watch now.
Yeah, a little bit. And it's a cool map. It's a cool idea for the map too, right? Because roaches actually will suffer from longer maps because they're kind of slow units, especially in the early game. But on a map this small, you can actually hold links and cross the map potentially. So I can see the idea they're working. If one of the players, if HateMe had gone for links and YoungYakov had the setup that he had, maybe we would have seen a little bit more action, a little bit more interaction early on. But as it stood, I mean, both players just kind of sat on their side of the map, and YoungYakov got to execute a really cool build unpunished, where he got the 2-1 advantage very early on. But yeah, I don't think he exploited it as well as he could have. Like, if your advantage is all in army, you usually want a fight, right? I mean, yeah, when I say it out loud, it just makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, I think he should have looked for that big fight. Interesting, Nidus. Difficult to surround too.
I could not agree with you anymore, especially as you know a whole lot more about Zerg than me, Cats. But the Nidus being that tucked in spot, a little bit annoying to reach, and this is the proper way to use it. Even though he doesn't get it to finish, you want to be trying to drop that while the opponent's distracted. But HateMe just runs up and says, okay, well, if you're split, then I'll just go for the big fight, have a couple of those Ravager Biles go through. And YoungYakov, we can see that he wants to play a little bit more of the hit and run style. He's not looking for those big head-to-head fight unless he can use it to create another opportunity for himself. And that's the side benefit of the Nidus. HateMe is always going to have to be checking his main and glancing over there in case another worm starts up at the edge of his vision.
Yep, good trades for HateMe though. And yeah, the hit and run style, I mean, it makes sense. In CVC, a lot of the time it's kind of like one of those things that you do a lot, because if your opponent doesn't have the best vision in the world, then it's easy to catch them off guard, and it's kind of on them to split. You don't have to count how many units you split, right? But they kind of have to, because if they send too many, then the engagement at the front is going to go poorly. If they send too few, then your economy is going to suffer. Oh, but this well, someone biled. That was a
big bile.
Biles there.
Yeah, popped at least one of the Ravagers there. Always a nice grab to be able to get. The drones had to kind of go in and out of the third base. So YoungYakov trying to put that economic pressure as best he can. But when you're in a ZVZ situation like this, I mean, it's all about, can I transition into something, and how do I do that without dying? So another Nidus in the main of HateMe. And look at this. Even if he completely shuts it down, he's still forcing the drones to get pulled, but counterattack, and careful with that F2.
Yeah, both players have to be careful. A couple of the Ravagers exposed at the front there, so be careful for HateMe as well. And YoungYakov having to send a lot of his army, maybe too much of his army back here, but he will corner these roaches from HateMe, or at least he should. So there should be no escape for these roaches. That is going to be a nice victory for YoungYakov. That should allow him to go for his lurker transition. He already has the lurker then, and he is actually quicker to the actually, no, he's slower to the hive, as HateMe is already starting the +3 attack and Hydra range of all upgrades. Let's see how this goes here, as it's now YoungYakov pushing up the ramp, but I don't like that. There's Hydras in the back. They output a lot of DPS, so I don't know that this is going to be the trade that YoungYakov's going to be looking for, and yeah, he's going to have to retreat.
Yeah, so he once again gets a Nidus up during this moment of time, but you're right. I mean, trying to push up a ramp, and especially when we think about the weaknesses of Hydralisks, they're a little bit squishy, can be kind of easy to dive on. But if you're pushing up a ramp into the full army and there's Hydralisks on the defensive side of things, that makes the trade so much better for HateMe, as both of the players have moved into the hive. We have the lurker dens, but until they actually get into the fight, we don't see that impact. And it gets a bit funky, right? Because you can do Ravager Biles to try and deal with them, but straight up lurkers, I mean, there's few units in the game that are better against roaches.
Yeah, I mean, lurkers are going to be king, and there's only a couple of Ravagers per side, and right now you probably want to be investing your gas into lurkers, right? So the more Ravagers you make, the less lurkers you will have, and lurkers are definitely going to be stronger than Ravagers. Ravagers rely on having to land those Biles. The lurkers can always reposition. So yeah, they're not going to be the best answer just given the state of the game. HateMe much quicker to the Vipers. He had a healthier gas bank, I suppose. So that is going to be the ace for him in the hole here in the fights, because he's going to be able to abduct or blinding cloud onto his opponent's lurkers a little bit faster.
Yeah, and that tech, the usage of it will be incredibly important. I think really nice play here. Both of them are getting Vipers. And if you're in this situation where you can get the yoinks, you can pull those lurkers in, you pick apart the enemy's army, that fine-tuned control starts to give you a lot more returns once you get these units in, especially if you can grab the lurkers. But sieging up in between that 3rd and that 5th base is HateMe, and not a lot can be done to save this one.
Not at all. And a Viper maybe getting picked off will be forgiven this time around by the Hydras. The lurkers have done their job here. On the other side, YoungYakov is trying to go for a little bit of a counter attack. Is there lurkers to defend this base? There is. 2 lurkers and a spine plus just reinforcements that are pouring in is going to be plenty enough. And this game has been very interesting, Nate, because it's been YoungYakov kind of applying the pressure over and over again and forcing HateMe to have all of the responses and all of the awareness to deal with him. And HateMe has been on top of it. So now HateMe is in the driver's seat after kind of deflecting YoungYakov a good 8 or 9 times. And he finds himself in a position where he has the timings where he is getting faster to the tech as a result of just holding throughout the game. And this is an easy cleanup as well for the Nidus. And now I would love it for HateMe to just move across the map and look to perhaps kill his opponent as YoungYakov continues the aggression.
I feel like HateMe has just played all of these defensive scenarios perfectly in this game. The way he dropped the blinding clouds on the lurkers, like, yeah, you sieged up 6 lurkers in my natural, but it's okay. By the time that this was even possible, I had more than enough to deal with it. And that's a pretty decent amount of resources that over time gets bled out in the Nidus worms, the roaches, and all of a sudden, HateMe, you're saying it. I mean, he should be getting aggressive. He's maxed out. YoungYakov stuck at 150 supply, and he's getting blinding clouded on the defensive end. Blinding clouding the guy who's attacking you can sometimes be a little bit less effective because he wants to push in anyway. So as long as your lurkers aren't hitting him, he's getting on you, and that's it. GG. HateMe takes game 1. Really impressive game out of him there. I mean, the both openings aside, because I do think the start of this game was very strange. But it's kind of whatever. They both like roaches. It is what it is. But HateMe just handled all of those down the line scenarios a little bit better. He was ready for the roach attack. He was ready for that little side swipe on the 3rd. His reaction time to pulling the drones, his reaction time to getting the Nidus out of his main. He shut down so many of them that by the time a Nidus finished, he was like, okay, well, I actually can leave 15 supply here now and just kill whatever comes out. And yeah, really, really strong game out of HateMe.
Yeah, and I would argue that's the harder way to play, right? Like to absorb over and over, because again, when you're posing the problem as the aggressive player, your opponent has to react perfectly and they have less time for that. Whereas the aggressive player can kind of shove half of his army or however much they want and, be like, okay, deal with this. And then you're the one that has to be like, okay, that's this many roaches. This is what I need to do. I need to pull my drones. I need to get enough of my army in position, but not enough that I lose the front fight as well, right? So HateMe working with the defender's advantage, of course. So there's a little bit of wiggle room, but I think that is the harder style to kind of perfect. And like you said, I think he played a flawless game on the defense and then just capitalized eventually, right, on all of those small wins.
Yeah, we go to Cosmic Sapphire for game 2. And I mean, look, this to me, I see a lot of good things about HateMe. The only question mark I have is ZVZ is a matchup that historically has that volatility in the first 5 minutes. So do I expect in game 2, especially if they look at all at what the other player did at the start of this one, do I expect them to both sit back and be like, I'm going to let him just go straight to +2 missile and not really do much until then? And I'm just going to do the same thing I did last game. I don't know that either of them are feeling that way because there's just, StarCraft is all about finding those holes in the strategy of your opponent. And if both of them want to play this style, then they both need to be aware that, there's maybe some opportunities to try and punish that really fast layer and those fast upgrades where you don't have as many units or you're not getting that 3rd base fast enough. So either something a little bit greedy or something a little bit aggressive. I would love to see that get switched up. And maybe on HateMe's side, he doesn't have to adjust too much because as we saw, he looked pretty bulletproof in that first map.
Yeah, I mean, as long as these players, and I don't know too much about them, I've only seen, a small sample size of games of each. But as long as they are somewhat flexible, as long as they have a bag of tricks to speak of, I imagine that this map, Cosmic Sapphire being the largest map in the map pool, in contrast to the smallest map in the map pool in the last map, should be a map where players are more willing to kind of mix it up, where circlings are going to be a little bit stronger. where Muta are going to be a little bit stronger, right? Mobility gains a lot of value in this type of map. So again, unless players aren't sunk very deeply into their one style, and that's exactly all of that they've been working on, this should be a very different affair here.
Yeah. So let's get into it. Let's find out what is going to happen on Cosmic Sapphire. We've got our red Zerg in the bottom right, currently leading the series 1-0. He is HateMe.
Boo. And in the top left, it is YoungYakov. How old is YoungYakov? Do we know?
I think he is.
I'm gonna Google it.
Well, I mean, glasses can be very deceiving, right? It's kind of like
you're gonna guess it.
You know, I've been 35 for my entire StarCraft career, and people in chat still went nuclear yesterday when I revealed I'm still in my 20s. So I'm gonna say he's probably if he's a StarCraft player, and I could say he's 24. There you go. I feel like I'm being a little bit conservative here. He could be 26, but the glasses definitely add a couple of years. You know, we've all been conditioned to stereotype people who wear glasses as being smart and looking a little bit more wise. So I'm going to lean against my own baked in bias.
He's 18.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So turns out I was really biased anyway.
Yeah, glasses had like 10 years apparently.
So he could have started playing StarCraft 2 when he was 6 years old. Is that what we're? Yeah. For all we know, that's how long he's been grinding.
For all we know, that's true.
he's on that Sigma Zerg grind set. What can I say?
Love it. All right, with both players are opening as standard as it gets on this map, it's just going to be the hatch first at 16 into gas pool. So yeah, a couple of links on the side of YoungYakov and no links made on the side of HateMe. So I already prefer HateMe's position a little bit. It's a little bit trickier how many links you make at first, because the standard kind of transition out of this is to get a fast third. So if you make 4 to 6 links and your opponent makes none, then it can be a little bit trickier for taking that third. But you know, if your opponent makes 2 and you made none, it's perfectly fine. You can take a little bit of damage from those 2. They're never going to kill the hatchery before you can respond. So that said, it's only YoungYakov that's taking the hatch for the time being, and an extremely fast lair from HateMe.
So is this just for roach speed again for HateMe and an Evo chamber to get the upgrades, or are we thinking it's going to be something else? Lings? Look at that block, by the way. The single queen and drone. You know 100%. You know 100%. That's like one of those things that you practice, and you probably have to screw that up. You have to probably like completely botch that at least maybe like 100 times before you can do it perfectly. that looks like something that someone tries on ladder after they watch this game and they never get it. They never figure it out.
Yeah, I think it's not as bad as it looks. The drone is kind of like a little bit chunkier than it looks, maybe, or the links aren't as slim as they look. I'm not sure, but it's gonna be YoungYakov applying the pressure here. And yeah, you're spot on. It's gonna be just the roach speed working here for HateMe. That seems to be, I mean, most games that I've watched them, it's just what he seems to prefer. But YoungYakov is going to use the map control and the mobility that he has gotten with the link speed. So he's showing to be a little bit more flexible. We'll see if it pays off here. As the queens are kind of exposed here, HateMe is actually going to have to drop 1 extra Evo chamber, even 2. I think the 1 might have been enough to just put the queen right in the middle, but not finding the space. And that means both queens are going to fall at the wall. These Evo chambers are not cheap either. I think YoungYakov should disengage, and he should have disengaged like 3 or 4 links ago. But yeah, I mean, some damage done there. He's not going to mind that.
So a little bit of a poke at the front. And I mean, we know that one of the reasons why people do these types of strategies where they want to have those early roaches or the early roach upgrades is so that you don't have to worry as much about those ling attacks. Because like if someone tries to hit you with the ling flood and you've got your +1 for the roaches, even without speed in a defensive stance early, you're going to 2-shot them. You go behind the wall. It's very difficult to kill you. But I guess the interesting balance of this is that he did go for that fast lair. So he can get aggressive with it too. You just need to make sure that, like he's doing this game, you keep a couple of them around that expansion, because usually back in the day we would say whoever opens with speed gets the third a little bit faster. They have that edge, and YoungYakov did finish his up earlier, but he doesn't really have like this huge gap of time before he could get attacked by roaches.
Yeah, that link was very important to get picked off there because it could have scouted the Spire, which is kind of like the real strategy that HateMe is going for. So he is too showing some flexibility here. He is going to apply some pressure with the roaches as soon as he gets roach speed. So he's saying, hey, I have roach speed, right? So watch out for that. Watch out for the roaches. And he has been playing a trickier game. Muta, again, very strong on this map because there is so much time for the roaches to cross. So you can get a number of Muta potentially a little bit quick, or definitely a little bit quicker than on any other map in the map pool, which is gonna make the Muta a lot stronger. And they are one of the most mobile units in the game. So even though he didn't open with the links and link speed, he does transition into mobility here and map control. HateMe does. So I quite like it.
Yeah, and this is one of the absolute best maps for air units. You just, again, I'm going to say it a lot this season, but almost all the maps in this pool have huge air spaces outside the main, between the main and natural. So those Mutalisks, it's very hard to pin them down and corner them. So not necessarily saying that they are guaranteed to run away with the game, but there's a lot more flexibility in terms of where you can approach from, where you can hide, and we know that they regenerate their health very quickly. So just having those safe spaces to retreat to means they're going to come back and hit you that much faster.
Yeah, and YoungYakov did scout the Spire, so beautiful read from him and good scout and really good move out. He moved out with the roaches without speed, which is not generally what you want to do, especially when your opponent already has speed, which you were touching on last game, right? Like you can get hard punished for that. But because he had the read of the Muta, that move out was so crucial because it made it so that HateMe had to fire up another like 14 roaches, where he would have liked to start the Muta, but he couldn't wait for the Spire because if his opponent actually committed to the attack, he didn't have enough roaches to defend. So the Muta are a little bit later than he would have liked, and that is going to buy time for YoungYakov to transition himself into a Hydra den, right? So just moving out, just showing presence on the map, just a little bit of a bluff, essentially saying, hey, answer this. If you don't answer it, I win. If you answer it, I get the time that I need. So beautiful moves there from YoungYakov.
And on the other side, too, of course, the Mutas can help clean up the Overlords and whatnot that are on the map down the line, deny a little bit of that vision. As we know, YoungYakov tried to bring the Nidus last game. So I'm never going to take that off the table. I think giving yourself ways to steal your opponent's attention is always going to be a winning strategy. You don't force it where it's not needed, but being able to kind of remove that option is definitely one of the strengths here for HateMe, because he has that mobility, he has that flexibility, and it will be tough once there's enough for him to try and find those opportunities to go for the counterattack. So the Mutas are going to hit the northeast, and it's not a ridiculous number of them, but it's something that he has to be mindful of, and that's going to open this big push on the left side. HateMe's army completely uncontested on this hatch. Should be able to easily pop it and just walk away.
Yeah, for sure. YoungYakov has the +2 advantage for now, but it is thanks due to those Muta that you have been so beautifully foreshadowing, giving him the map control, killing those overlords out on the map, that allows HateMe to move unnoticed, right? And because he has roaches, they can't really get caught by anything. His opponent doesn't have Muta. He probably doesn't have infestors. So he just moves in. Hey, you weren't watching. Too late. I already killed your hatchery and I took my own fort. So great move from HateMe here to try to stabilize. I think before then, I preferred YoungYakov's position a little bit more just because the Muta are not going to stack up against the Hydras in a straight-up fight. But now with Ravagers, that's a completely different story. And yeah, Ravagers are going to be kind of king here, as it's going to be very difficult for YoungYakov to take an engagement against this many Ravagers in this choke. The Vials are just going to be so powerful. Even conceding the ground here, HateMe for the time being seems to be just content denying the 4th base. That will guarantee him an advantage on the economic front, but I really want him to take the engagement here, as now there is some Ravagers on the field for YoungYakov, and that's gonna help. The Hydras, however, are exposed at the front, which is not gonna help his case. A lot of those are glass cannons from the side. The Hydras do a little bit of damage, but it's looking like HateMe might have enough. Those Hydras exposed, so he repositions his army a little bit to the left to try to account for that. The Ravagers are also very expensive and very squishy, so yeah, HateMe with a beautiful position here. And this is what I was talking about earlier as well, Nate. Controlling the middle ground allows you to take whichever fight is most convenient. So now opting to go for the fight on the right. And as the army from the left comes, yeah, I mean, you've already done plenty of damage.